Hi there, I'm Jerry with Hilgersom Landscape Centre. Welcome back to this landscape. Let's go see what the progress is like. In this project, we're doing a low retaining wall, making a small raised planter, one in the back as well as another in the front. We're using a product called Stonehenge from Abbotsford Concrete Products. We chose this product because it has a bit of an old world feel because it's a tumbled product as opposed to, say, your typical split face retaining wall block. Comes in a few different colors. We're using the sandalwood for this project. Let's start from scratch. So first thing you want to do is get your levels. Essentially, you're working backwards with your math, trying to figure out the height that you want to be and working backwards from there. We're going to be putting in 2 blocks. Each block is 4 inches tall, so we're going to be going 8 inches down from our final height. We've set these 1-inch square tubing called screening bars. We put them in the sand and we set them to the level that we want, and that just makes the whole process of leveling the sand so much easier. We've put those in, we've put a 2x4 across to make the sand all nice and smooth, and this will make installing the blocks so much easier. They're not something that stays in the sand. So we'll take them out, simply lift them out. Of course, you can use different materials for a screening bar. We just find the 1-inch tubing, something that we can reuse. To deal with these tracks that are left behind, we need to get a little bit of sand. Simply put it in. Got to pack it in a little bit because we want the density of the sand in the track to be the same as everywhere else. And then just take a trowel, simple concrete trowel, and level it all out. So now that the sand is all level, we're marking out exactly where we want the wall to be. Making straight lines where they need to be, putting a chalk line in is your best bet. Keeps you nice and true. The nice thing about these retaining wall blocks is you can lay them straight, you can lay them curved, you can lay them whatever shape you want. You may have to do a little bit of cutting, which we will have to do, especially in the beginning there. But other than that, it's kind of like playing like Lego, right? And it's with these 3 shapes, we can make it look great. So I'm just gonna start in the beginning here, choosing really a random block. There's no rhyme or reason at this point what I'm laying in. As you go with consecutive layers, the only thing is you wanna make sure that you're staggering any joints. You don't want any joints lining up on top of each other. So we're just gonna start out like this. Just following that line that I made. We will have to do a cut on that end, as I mentioned. And then for this curve, these ones, some of these blocks do have a taper on them, and that allows you to make a curve without doing a ton of cuts. So let's utilize those tapers to get this curve that we want. And also keep in mind that as long as it's not the top block on the retaining wall, to have a gap in the back isn't going to be a problem, because when we finish it off, when we have our final cap on, we'll cut those to make sure there's a tight fit there, and you'll never notice. And you might notice right here, I'm not using the big blocks, and that's just because those big ones don't have a taper on them. But these medium-sized, 2 smaller sizes definitely do. So, but once we get to the straight run, we'll be using the big blocks in conjunction with these guys. And because our sand is all nicely leveled out, these guys are already going to be laying quite level and true. We will check them just to be sure. After I lay a bit in, we'll be putting a level on them and checking them just to make sure that they're perfect. That's what we like to see. All right, now we can start mixing in some of the big guys, but we still want that random quarry stone look. So we're gonna still be putting a bunch of these small guys in as well. And if you're laying a straight way, even though these ones have a taper on them, depending on the way you rotate them, we always want to maintain as tight a gap as possible. So I'm just saying, put it like this versus, you know, having it the other way where you may have a gap. All right, now that we've laid our brick in, the hard part is always going to be with your first layer. After the first layer is laid in, we have to level that out. But once that is leveled out, then it's just a matter of stacking other blocks on top and it'll fly. So first thing I'm going to do is just put a level across and see how we're looking. So I'm just going to hit that down a bit. And another good trick is, you know, use a 2x4, obviously making sure that there's no bows in it, and just kind of hitting it down. This way you can level out more one brick at a time and it'll be more consistent in the long run. We also want to make sure that our wall isn't tipped forward or backwards, that it's laying nice and level. So just double check those a bit. These ones are looking great. All that hard work on screeding the sand has paid off and is making our job much easier. So once these are leveled, we're just going to do that for every one of them. So it's maybe a little time consuming, but it's well worth it when you start stacking the other blocks on top and it just goes quick and easy. One thing you have to be mindful of with these particular type of blocks, there is no interlock in the retaining wall. Each layer will need to be glued together. I would just recommend that just to give it a little extra stability, that they're not going to be sliding forward, backwards in the future. So we're doing a raised planter here as well, a little bit taller than the one in the back that we were just working on. We're just on the last layer and Pete is laying in the top cap. All he's looking for is to ensure that the lines do not line up vertically in the wall. Just making sure we have that staggered joint, but keeping it all nice and random for that nice look, that the look that we're going for. This is a straight portion that he's putting in right now. It's not necessary to do any cuts, but pretty soon here, when we start doing this curve, now is the time that we want to start cutting blocks to ensure a tight fit everywhere. So being that this is the top layer to our raised planter, we want to avoid any gaps that may occur, especially on a curve like this. So we'll have to make a few cuts. Cuts are pretty easy to do if you have a masonry saw. All we got to do is make a few measurements and bring it to the saw, and we'll get rid of this gap right away here. So the top layer of most retaining walls and raised planters need to be glued. That just prevents people from running away with one, or when you're stepping on it from them tipping off. In this particular product, we like to see all the layers glued together because they don't have that interlock that I mentioned before. Before we do that, I do like to get all the cuts in first, just so that you know when you're gonna put them back on and they're glued, that they're gonna be in the right position, right? We know that this section here is all done and ready to go, so I'm just gonna flip them off quickly. Now, just want to make sure that they're free of dust and debris. And then it's a matter of putting on a product like this. This is Lumberlock, but you can really use a PL product. There is products called Brick Stick that we sell that are just for gluing a concrete block. So we're just going to put 2 beads on this particular one because it's only 8 inches wide. A nice thick bead of glue. And then we're going to start from the edge here, nice and tight up against. And for this particular product, even though the bricks are a little bit damp, it doesn't matter. They'll glue down just fine. And the last one here. And then the last step is just to ensure that they're sitting exactly where we want them, because within about a half hour or so, these things are going to be difficult to take off. So when doing a retaining wall or a raised planter, things like of that nature, there are many different products you can choose from. We happen to choose this Stonehenge product from Abbotsford Concrete Products just for the look that we wanted to have in this landscape. It was partially the color that we wanted, but also we wanted a feel of almost a natural product. So this kind of resembles a bit of a quarried stone because it doesn't have that split face, which is a very typical concrete retaining wall block look. And this one, having the 3 different sizes, it's not going to be a consistent pattern when laying it. It's going to be a little bit more random. I think that was also important. If you look at this house, the veneer stone that they have on it also has that kind of modular random look to it, and that's kind of what we wanted as well with the retaining wall block. One thing I didn't mention, this block is also super easy to use, but it's very versatile. Not only can you use it just laying it flat, as you can see it here, you can also lay it vertical like this, and that will just give it another random look. With this particular product, it's very versatile, and you can really do some cool looks with it. We're at the point now on this project where we're laying the paving stone patio. We've decided to use a pretty unique product to Abbotsford Concrete Products. It's called the estate stone. The house being kind of a craftsman style, this stone has kind of that feel to it with the kind of rough edges on it. Makes it look almost like, well, a little bit like a tumbled or quarried stone. When you're laying a paving stone patio, it's again all in the base work, very similar base as what we were installing for the raised beds, the retaining walls. Only difference is we're doing a larger area for it. The sand is just made level with the screening bars, and we're just very careful with our slopes and our heights to ensure that we get proper runoff of water. You may notice that we have some plywood over top of our paving stone when we're installing. Main reason for that is just to carry some weight. It's best to not walk on your paving stone as you're installing it. These bricks, they will settle in a little bit, right? So stay off the edges. Try to stay on plywood if you at all can, and the final result will be fantastic. This patio being such a unique shape, we're using a rectilinear stone and fitting it in a curved area. So that's obviously going to mean a lot more cuts. What we like to do is put a border on the outside, and what that does, it does a couple of things. It makes it look a lot more finished when you have that border It just, you can either use a complementary color, or if you really want a statement, you can use a bolder color, like a darker color to really border it. But the other thing, and maybe more importantly, the reason why we use a border is to contain any small pieces. So if you were laying this brick in without a border, just the nature of the curve, some of these pieces may be quite small. And when you get a small piece on an edge, chances are when you're going to step on it, it's going to tip out. So if we have that inside the border, that's not going to happen, and you're just going to have a better laid patio. One thing that's really important to keep in mind, especially if your patio is more than, say, a pallet's worth of material, on these blended colors, so this is a color called Copper Canyon, but you can see from the same, or from different pallets, this is the same color, which is quite stark, right? What we like to do is always make sure that you're carrying brick from more than one pallet right from the beginning. That way you get a nice blend throughout your entire project, and it's not going to become blotchy with different pallets noticeably in different parts of your patio. Now with every patio, you're going to need some way to hold it in. Because we're 3 feet away from this concrete curb, we need something to hold this in. And that is why it's important when we're installing our base gravel to actually have it come out further past the actual dimensions of the patio. And I'll show you why. This is snap edge. There's a bunch of different types of plastic edging restraint on the market. Nice thing about this stuff, although it comes in straight lengths, matter of clipping a few plastic pieces out, and now this stuff will flex. In order to flex this stuff, really easy though, easy product to use. Matter of cutting it once in between to get an outside curve. If you're doing an inside curve, just a matter of cutting the piece out altogether, and now we can flex the other way. And that makes this type of edging restraint so much easier to use than, say, like a wood or even a poured concrete. As long as you're installing it low enough, I think a lot of times people are installing it a little too high, and over the years it'll heave up and look terrible. We want to make sure our edging is, you know, about halfway up that brick, and then that's when we start putting in a spike. I'm not really ready to put in this edging restraint yet, but just to kind of give you guys a little demonstration, just a matter of holding it in. You can see it's pretty hard to hammer in. That's because we're in concrete, or sorry, in gravel. If it was just in dirt, these spikes will be heaving up really easy. So that's why we want to get that base in. One thing to mention when you're getting your levels for a patio, or for a driveway for that matter, you got to keep in mind the last process in the paving stone installation is to have some kind of vibratory packer, plate tamper over top of the bricks, and that is doing a couple things. It gets the jointing sand in the joints, but it also kind of packs the bricks down a little bit. Because of that, our sand right now seems kind of high. Like our bricks are a little bit high compared to our final grade. This will be our final grade, but we're about a ½ inch higher than that. And the reason is we plan for that. Once the paving stone have been plate tamped, they're going to be sinking down or settling down about a ½ inch. And when it's all said and done, everything's going to be nice and even. So that's installing a segmental retaining wall in a nutshell. Of course, if you have any more questions, if I didn't cover anything thoroughly enough for you, please come down to our landscape center, Hilgersom Landscape Centre. We'll answer any questions you may have and show you all the options you have for segmental retaining walls. Whether you're building a retaining wall, a raised planter, a outdoor kitchen, whatever it may be, we'll have a product for you. Next time, we're going to be talking about landscape lighting, how you can really increase your enjoyment of the yard by lighting it up at night. I'm Jerry with Hilgersom Landscape Centre. See you next time.